Hari Om, Hari 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 Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Hari Om.
Very nice. So, Damini ji, you want to also continue with some chanting until we have, oh, there he is. Okay, we have him here.
Welcome, Dr. Saab. Unmute yourself.
Hello, Ji. Namaskar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, like I just arrived. It's got stuck in.
Traffic.
Yes.
Okay, so good. We are actually already live on Facebook. We started with a nice, beautiful opening chant with Harsha leading it. So, Damaniji, would you like to invoke?
Sure. योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनाम् पतञ्जलिं प्राणजरीरान्नतोऽस्मि आबाहो पुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रसिधारिणम् सहस्रशीर्षं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
So, good evening and welcome everyone who are joining us on Zoom and Facebook Live, locally and globally, to Naveda's 80 is the New 50 webinar panel discussion number 22. So, I am Veena Dansingani, founder, director, and alopecia hair loss specialist of Naveda Integral Wellness Center in Hong Kong, which is the first value-based integral wellness center offering a transformative health experience to its clients in Hong Kong. So June is a very important month for us and those in the field of yoga. As we know that International Yoga Day is celebrated worldwide and is celebrated annually on the 21st of June since 2015, following its inception in the United Nations General Assembly in 2014. So Naveda has taken the initiative to bring awareness and educate people about authentic, traditional, and classical Ashtanga yoga. So when people talk about yoga these days, they think it's all about difficult postures, but we would like to make people aware that it is more than just difficult postures, and that everybody can practice yoga on a daily basis. So we have dedicated to celebrate International Day of Yoga, which is a special addition to Naveda's powerful and meaningful campaign called 80 is the New 50 panel discussion, which we launched on the 21st of January 2021. A campaign which was inspired by our director, who is right here with us, Mr. Lal Darinani, who turned 80, or should I say the new 50, on the 15th of April 2021. It really takes something to remain happy, healthy, active, and purposeful even at this age, and to really look and feel, especially feel, 30 years younger than his chronological age. And more recently, he has put lots of focus and concentrated efforts in reigniting his love for music and singing. So much so that this focused efforts have made such a big difference in transforming lives, his and lives of the people from over 50 countries. Yoga plays a very integral and responsible part to keep one healthy, active, and alive. Yoga is a way of life. It is not just a physical workout, but a multi-dimensional workout which addresses physiological, psychological, emotional, and spiritual aspects of life. Nowadays, yoga is really become a trend, as we know, and we see more and more people practicing different forms of yoga, and people might be receiving confusing messages as to what is authentic yoga. We've heard people talk about hot yoga, beer yoga, dog yoga, and so, which it can really give a very shallow and superficial image or experience in this really deep ancient science and philosophy, which has been practiced in India for over 5,000 years. So, from the beginning of June this year, in our 80 is the New 50 panel discussion series, we have invited masters, doctorates, and educators from the field of yoga to share their wisdom about Ashtanga Yoga, which is the 8 limbs of yoga of Maharishi Patanjali, and to truly understand what is traditional, authentic, and classical yoga, and who all can practice this, and what are the benefits to those who practice this daily. We all know that as we age, lots of us tend to have lots of various different kind of physical challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges, social challenges, spiritual challenges. So does Ashtanga Yoga have a solution for all this? So today we would like to welcome our panel guest to discuss about the 5th and 6th limb of yoga, which is Pratyahara and Dharna, which means withdrawing the senses and focused concentration. So let's see who our panel guests today are. Of course, we have Dr. Sanjay Nagakar, who is a renowned microbiologist. He is a PhD from the University of Hong Kong. He has published more than 100 scientific papers, research articles, reports, and conference abstracts. He has invented over 83 technologies in preventive healthcare, environmental science, ecology, and nutraceutical functional foods. He will be interacting with our special guest speakers about the scientific aspects of, or even validating, yoga, in particularly therapeutic yoga, with our panel guest today. Not to forget, we even have Mr. Lal Darinani, who is our 80s and New 50 campaign director and ambassador, who is going to also share with us, or perhaps share some tips of how he has been aging so happily and healthy, and perhaps yoga is one of the ways he's chosen. And I will be taking questions from the audience, whether those who are attending on Zoom or even on Facebook Live. Please type in your questions and we will be taking them. So a little bit more about Mr. Lal Darinani, I'd like to emphasize that he doesn't really need to work. He doesn't work, but he always,
Don't
because
work.
he's been a business tycoon, he has seen an opportunity in the wellness industry, and he has invested in his own well-being and invested in other people's well-being as well by bringing Naveda Wellness into being, to bring in a paradigm shift in the way people deal with health, and really, especially offering a purpose to our senior citizens to live a more purposeful and meaningful life. He truly is a role model to many, and inspiration to many he crosses path with, and he keeps himself active, healthy, and happy in life. And I know that yoga is one of his practices, which he will share about. We have very special guest speakers today. One we have is Mrs. Damini Dayal. She is currently in the US. She's a highly acclaimed yoga scholar and practitioner with over 27 years in the field, teaching various aspects of yoga and Indian philosophy, with masters in Indian philosophy from Mumbai University. She has in-depth knowledge on Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Samkhya philosophy, Yogahara, and has been practicing and teaching yoga at the Yoga Institute Santa Cruz, Mumbai, which is the oldest yoga institute in the world. She's also been part of the Ayush ministry, especially in the academic committee. And then we have Harsha Chelaram, who is a yoga educator and a teacher trainer offering integral yoga from Swami, correct me if I'm mistakenly pronouncing this. So it's Swami's Satchit. Can you say? Yeah, you'll have to say this.
Sachidananda.
Satchidananda. Yes, and accessible yoga. She is a founder of Yama Foundation, a charity that makes yoga, art, and meditation accessible to yoga's most vulnerable communities. Harsha advocates for disability rights, equality, and equity in well-being spaces, and has developed special trainings, programs, and presentations in Hong Kong and internationally, specializing in empowerment and inclusion. So welcome everybody to this wonderful panel discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to start with Damini ji. Welcome today. Thank you for being here. I know you didn't really know who we are, but you accepted our invitation, so that's very gracious of you. So I would like for you to introduce a little bit about, or give us a recap about, what is Ashtanga Yoga, and then we can take on to the two limbs that we're going to be talking about.
Okay. When we talk of Ashtanga Yoga, I'll give you a little incident that happened quite a few years back, now where people are very aware. It was quite a few years back, and I was conducting a yoga session over here. The people I didn't know from different countries. And I began with Ashtanga Yoga, and one lady put up her hand and she said, I practice Ashtanga. And I said, okay. She said, may I show you? So I said, of course. She came to the focus, the center of the room, and she started on a series of Surya Namaskars. And I was looking, I said, okay, I don't know about this Ashtanga Yoga, but well, I'm learning, always learning. So it's so good that I think, Naveda, you have started this whole seminar, which is seen worldwide, about making people aware about this concept of Ashtanga Yoga not being at a physical level alone. So Ashtanga Yoga is a part of Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I'm sure many of you must be knowing Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras approximately 2,500 years ago. And he has given us 4 chapters. And these 4 chapters that are there, Ashtanga Yoga begins in the 2nd chapter. In the 2nd chapter, we call the 2nd chapter as Sadhan Pada. Pada means chapter, and Sadhan represents the techniques or the means or the technology of how yoga is to be practiced. It is not about just the yogis or the sannyasis. Yoga over here in this chapter focuses on the householder, we who are living in the world, doing everything that we do, and yet we want to access the spiritual dimension, which becomes very elusive. So here in this chapter, he begins with Ashtanga Yoga. Ashta Anga. Ashta is 8 and Anga is parts. Again, many times I have seen, there are pictures. There is a ladder, and we see little pictures of people climbing that ladder. Well, Ashtanga, Anga doesn't represent a ladder. It is neither parts in that sense. Ashta Anga is like physical, the body part. You say Sharira Anga. So if you're walking, and when you're walking, you can't walk with both your feet together. One foot goes up in the front, the other is at the back. So what are we doing is we are trying to achieve a balance. So the hands, the body, the eyes, the ears, everything moves in a coordinated way in harmony. So Ashtanga Yoga, all the angas of these 8, we call it as the eightfold path, they move together in a unified way, in a harmonious way, leading us to something beyond even conception, beyond even our normal understanding. And that is why Ashtanga Yoga is not only becoming popular, it it's being understood as a way of how we live life. So that is about Ashtanga Yoga. And today, you just mentioned that, yes, we are going to be focusing on the 5th stage and the 6th stage. Now, 5th and 6th are these numbers, but as we say, they all flow, it just flows. So Pratyahara is the 5th dimension. I like to use the word dimension rather than stage or state or step. So Pratyahara, later on as we progress, I will go into the Sanskrit meanings, because I'm a proponent of Sanskrit, and I feel if we do not know the technical word, it is impossible to understand what Maharshi Patanjali wants to tell us. So Pratyahara and then Dharana. So I'll go back to you, Veena, as how you want this session to progress.
Yes. So, yes, so you can possibly tell us about Pratyahar, and we'll see how it goes in the discussion, because it's a discussion. Maybe Dr. Sanjay would then I like to ask you something, or Harsha would like to add in something. So feel free, because it's a flow.
No,
As we
I suggest something over here, because Damniji, as you said, like you are doing it for quite some time, and you have a lot of experience with your student. And the whole purpose of this panel discussion here, that the audience should able to understand. So far we can give the message collectively, Harsha and Damini, both of you, that will solve our purpose. So we make it like I think like Harsha will talk definitely for a special section, I believe so. But Damini, just if you explain like overall, then Harsha can see that how this fit into your group of people, or by and large, because one of the things which I always mention with Veena, that there are a lot of people, those who are not physically, I will not say physically fit, but somehow they are intimidated or reluctant to or avoid those kind of posture, because they think I cannot do it, right? So like they cannot have enough flexibility, or they cannot bend themselves. So that's where this whole idea is. It's not about bending or like turning and twisting like that. So even like you can lie down, or you can sit in a chair, you still can do yoga. So it's like a whole thing. So that's the way, if you can take forward, that would be very useful for the
Thank you.
audience.
Thank you, Daminiji. I think that was such a wonderful explanation of Ashtanga Yoga. I believe it was Madonna, the singer, that made physical Ashtanga Yoga famous. And that's why everybody thinks Ashtanga Yoga is this particular sequence.
Yes.
I would say that the practice of the 8 limbs of yoga. I love the way you say that it's limbs. I like to call it body parts as well. It's almost like, the yamas and the niyamas are your legs. They're the grounding elements to keep you grounded to the earth. Asana and pranayama are your hands. They're very useful functional tools to navigate the earth. And then you have Pratyahara Dharna Dhyana Samadhi. Pardon my pronunciation in Sanskrit. I'm a very westernized NRI. But these are the internal practices. And you need to have, I know that the world looks at yoga like a physical practice. An embodied practice is very important. You have to be very, very connected to your physical body to understand it, to master it, in order to realize that you are so much more than that. Acceptance of your physical body is where I come into play with teaching yoga, accepting who you are and how you are and what you look like and your body image. But it's just a vehicle to the rest. And the yamas and the niyamas, like I said, they're your foundations. They're absolutely foundations for living a beautiful life. And if you look at all of the 8 limbs of yoga, this is the most accessible form of yoga practice. Asana, I would say, it can be adapted by all means, but it is the least accessible. What is accessible? Things like your breath, things like your mind. You carry your breath and your mind with you everywhere you go, in every scenario. Why only focus on developing the physical body when you can develop your heart, your attitudes, your breath, your thought patterns, the way you regard yourself, the way you regard people in your life, the world around you. And so this is all very much linked. When you're talking about accessibility for people with limited mobility, 80 is the new 50, yes. But you have to be very realistic with your present moment body. Today, yesterday, you could maybe bend more than you can today. The bodies change. There is a concept called the gunas, the 3 gunas, rajas, tamas, sattvas. They're the qualities of nature. One is much more energetic. One is much more lethargic. One is much more balanced. And those 3 play in our bodies, in our minds, in the foods we eat, in the weather. And so that all, from a natural perspective, affects our energy. So if we can practice with a present moment awareness, we have all these tools from the 8 limbs to practice. Let's say we're at home, stuck in bed with a cold or a headache. It doesn't mean we cannot practice yoga. That's just one part. There's a whole volumes and volumes. I mean, all you need to do is read this. This is the book that I read. It's very old. It's falling apart. And there's countless practices in there that you can bring into your life. And that's what's accessible. And that is how yoga is beyond the body and accessible.
Wonderful. So it really gives us both of the sides. Damini ji and Harsha ji has explained 8 limbs of yoga from that perspective and how it can be actually useful for everybody, right? So yes, Damini ji, I would like for you to speak on the 2 limbs that we are focused on today. So please give us your perspective on that, or what your experience is. What's your experience, your teachings, your learnings, which you would like to share to the audience, which can become very relevant to them as well.
Yes. Though I am very deep into academics too, I love to go back into what we say is how do we live life using what Maharishi Patanjali has told us. Now, if we see Maharishi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they're very complex, too complex for a layperson to understand. So what I love to do is I love to simplify them in such a way that they become very accessible and easy for everyone or anyone to understand and to follow. So far, yes, the yama, the niyama, the asana, the pranayama, all these are at a physical or an exterior level. Okay, the yamas are not exterior, but they are external in the sense they deal with our interpersonal relationships. The niyamas are my personal practices, which I have to practice very cleverly, very skillfully. And then, of course, asanas are important. Asanas are important because the body is a temple. If I disregard my body as a temple, then I will start abusing it. So, asanas are not just for health or fitness or for being young, but asanas are there to see that this beautiful temple is maintained in its optimum condition, so that when I go ahead, I have this beautiful body and mind which gives me the experiences which nature intends me to have. So there, that far we go. And traditionally it has been known that these first four stages are known as bahiranga yoga. Bahir means external, and yoga is these yoga parts, the bahir anga, the again we've seen the word anga. So these are bahiranga yoga. Then when we go to the other, the dharana, dhyan and samadhi, they are the antaranga yoga. Antar is internal. However, when the concept of pratyahar comes, pratyahar is a concept which is in the middle, which takes us, it's like the bridge between the external and the internal. Some scholars put pratyahar as antaranga, some scholars put it as bahiranga, but I feel it neither falls in bahiranga or antaranga. It is that which takes us across. It is the Tirtha Sthana. When I say Tirtha Sthana, Indians, if they are there, we understand the word Tirtha very well. When you're living around in the world, what do you want to do? Want to go to India? I want to go to the Tirtha Sthanas, pilgrimages. So I'll go to the Char Dham Yatra and this and that. So pilgrimage becomes very important. So the meaning of this word tirtha, and why I use this tirtha word here, is it represents exactly what pratyahar is. Tirtha is that place which allows one to cross over. So, what are we doing with Pratyahara? Pratyahara is enabling us to cross over from that external kind of life that we are living towards a very focused and internal way of approaching life and living life. So, now just to go into the technical meaning of the word Pratyahara, because I cannot I cannot do justice without doing that. So the word pratyahara, prati or prati, and ahara or hara. Now prati represents a direction. So where are we going? So this prati or pratya, that represents the direction we have to move towards. So far we were on an external journey. The body, the external relationships that we were handling, all that was there. Now this journey begins in another direction. So prati also represents in an opposite direction, because there are lots of sutras like Pratipaksha Bhavna and all these different sutras going to that. Here, Prati represents now, so far we have been looking at the world in a certain way. Let me start to look at it differently. Is the world so important, or is my inner growth or inner evolution important? So Pratya or Prati represents that. Now, there are two ways of looking at the remaining part of the word. Ahar, the pratyahara. So you can use the word ahara or hara. When we say ahara, the word ahara has its root in the word ahya. Now, when we say ahya is to gather, to collect everything and then put it or take it inward. So what are we doing here? When we look at this word ahar or ahya over here, the senses are going outward. I'm looking at you, I'm looking at my laptop just now. So my senses, my eyes, my ears, everything is focused outside. So I'm gathering all these forces that are outside. How do I gather these forces? Through my senses. I have how many senses? We normally say the five senses, the five internal organs, then the five external, the motor organs. So we say the Dasha Indriya, but we don't say Dasha Indriya, we say Ekadashi or 11 Indriyas. So the mind is the 11th Indriya, which is extremely important. So all these 11 Indriyas we take and then we direct them inward. So that is Ahara or Ahya, gathering our forces. We are given with these 11 forces. They are forces. They are these energies. They are what we use, and we use them and we do something about them. So what are we going to do? We'll see later. So Pratyahara, gathering these senses, these forces, and directing them. Pratyahara, the Prati. Now if you use the word Prati and Hara, the word hara or ha, however, represents destruction, reduction, elimination. So what are we eliminating? What are we destroying? We are destroying impurities. We are eliminating all those impurities that we've been collecting and collecting all these years. I'll give you very practical examples. When we talk about pratyahar, uh, when we meet people in real life and they say, oh, okay, you're wearing a very nice outfit, oh, okay, you've done your hair nicely, and what yoga do you practice? So initial thing is the yogi should be orange clothes, white clothes, and then okay, then we'll come and listen to you or understand you. But pratyahar represents that we have to live in the world because nature has given us these senses. So we have to use them. If we stop using these senses, we are very foolish. So using these senses is important. Using what we have is important. But I'll tell you the sutra, because I will, if you call me sometime, that I will never go away from the sutras, never deviate. So the sutra says, Svavishaya asamprayoge. Svavishaya, Vishaya is all these objects that we have. And Swa means self. That is the objects that I have. I have these organs, these sense organs, my body. And the external objects are there. What I do is I keep running away there. So asamprayoga, pratyahar represents disconnect a little bit to all that is taking you there. So it's not that we have to stop using everything or stop the senses from being out there, but it is how we use the senses, how we allow the senses. One other very simple example I'll give you. You know, we all go out into the world. You're living in Hong Kong, and it takes me back to 1986 when I was in Hong Kong and I came from India to Hong Kong. Wow, what a world, beautiful. It's so exciting, shopping and this and that. And the world was, the external world was telling me, Damini, come, take me, do this, do that. So the world entices me. But how I'm going to get enticed into the world is about pratyahara. How I'm going to react to the world is important. So it's not about reaction, it's about my actions that I'm going to do. So pratyahara is telling me my senses are going to run there. So I have to take my senses and not allow them to be misused, or they are not allowed. So I do not allow my senses to run away. So I will use these external world, I will use my senses without indulgence. So the mantra over here in pratyahara is to be in the world, but not with indulgence, not with just freaking out with everything. So balance is the key word over here. And that is how pratyahar is talked about, that yes, The senses are there, they are a part of me, but Pratyahara is going to tell me how and when do I need to withdraw those senses. If somebody is hurting me, everybody in the world hurts us. So if somebody is hurting me, how do I prevent myself from being hurt and yet live in the world? So this is the training that I develop in Pratyahara, is to manage myself in the most beautiful, harmonious, balanced way, is about Pratyahar, where my indriyas are in my control, which will go into the next sutras, because see, we have to understand that Maharishi Patanjali, when he talks about Pratyahar, there are only two sutras. There's only one sutra. Yamas, Niyamas, he tells us a lot later. He talks about asanas also in 3 sutras. Pranayam he takes 4 sutras. But Pratyahar, one sutra. So we are left to our own resources to understand Pratyahar. So with this little introduction to Pratyahar, is that we are not talking, Maharishi Patanjali is not saying don't live in the world, we have to live in the world, but we have to know how to live in the world and see that we are not destroyed. We become better and never bitter. So that is how we have to approach Pratyahara. So I think I've spoken a lot. I take a little pause.
Yes. Unmute yourself, Dr. Sanjay.
Very interesting thing. Thanks for sharing that. We have a student in India, in Rishikesh. Right now, exactly, he is doing his PhD in yoga, specializing on decoding Pratyahara. Okay, so it's a kind of a genre analysis of Pratyahara. And then it's a very interesting thing we say, like we are scientifically measuring that wow factor, appreciation, right? Some people, like when you get too excited and appreciate, like, wow, this is so good, and all those kind of things, clapping, getting, cheering up, how the magnetic field develop in your world, like inside the body, how your breathing is changing, how everything is happening. And then you become a little bit more formal, like you are conscious, but you are still appreciating. You are more conscious, you are still appreciating. And it is really surprising to know that this is very contradictory to the motivational talker, like they will not like this. It's a just opposite, because the body quantum, what we are measuring is a very high and synergetic when people are absolutely conscious, like what they are doing, rather than they are when going like, so like when they are walking, like a lot of work we have done, like when they are watching cricket, and then, oh, sixes, and like get involved, or like party cheers, this, that, and all those kind of things. The energy go absolutely out of control. So that's what, like, the new thing we are trying to put through the science, that what is the definition of happiness. So from Pratyahara, that the question is coming, like the happiness need to be in a conscious form. So this is very interesting what you touch, a lot of research going on that particular part. So indulgent, right? How much you indulge even in the positive thing. So because we always say, like, the positive thing is always good, but you just touch that, and a coincidence that we are working on this topic, where the expression of your happiness, even if it is not conscious, your happiness is not working for you, because the energy go, like we have a measurement, like, because like in Rishikesh, we have like now so many Vedic labs, where we have a very high-tech instrument which we put in the body, and we can have like a very scientific, a true measurement of the body, what exactly going on. So this is something like a medical or a high-end science kind of things, expensive instrument, what you get in the university. So I think the future of yoga is coming up a lot, and that is why there is a debate we started, that how to express the happiness. Is the happiness working for you? Doesn't matter you are happy or not happy, right? So if we put like the Pratyahara point of view, how you express your happy in the context of Ashtanga yoga. And that's what the research is going on. It's so amazing to know that if you are going crazy, you are happy, you're going crazy, it's not working. Your breathing sequence go wrong, your brain signals go wrong, your heart beating goes wrong, like the whole synergy what like is going. And when you are consciously happy, suddenly everything start falling, something like that. So I think like that's why people are talking more about the meditation or like the awareness about your breathing or whatever like that. So just wanted to share this. Thank you.
So Harsha, what is your take on this?
Wow, I am absolutely loving all these perspectives. Pratyahara, and the Dr. Sanjay, when you speak about happiness, I mean, ultimately that's what everybody's looking for, is a sense of happiness. But I think when you're the study that you've mentioned, people are talking about like a super excitable state, which is not necessarily, we call that being happy. But if you have that super excitable state, it also gives rise to the opposite side of the spectrum, which is a super depressed state.
Exactly.
And a lot of Western research talks about depressive states and anxiety. So it's very nice to be researching both, but actually it's about equanimity in both.
Yes.
And so the way I like to actually, excuse me, I'm going to use a little physical example, right? If you look at the pendant or the mirror at the bottom, oh, you can't really, hold on. Let me give you a little bit of a wider perspective so you can see this whole thing. All right. So I take this, and this is almost like our consciousness, and the tassels are kind of where our consciousness is, and that's life, right? Back and forth and back and forth. And so what you're talking about is like happy, sad, pleasure, pain, gain, loss, etc., etc. Through the practices of yoga, particularly Pratyahara, here you're completely engaging at the level of your senses. But as you develop your consciousness, it's like you're climbing up the mala slowly by slowly. So even if you're somewhere midway, you're not as tossed about by all your sensory experiences. And when you go further and further up, and climbing up is part of your 8-limbed yoga practice, whatever that may be, you're at the top, you're completely centered, but it doesn't mean you stop living life. It just means that you're centered and you have the capacity to stop the shaking.
Wonderful.
And this is how I like to describe Pratyahara, because through the charity, we work with people who have addictions, people who are actually sleeping on the street. We've done, we started out by a hatha yoga class for street sleepers. It's actually turned into 1 hour of yoga nidra, because it's finally a place indoors that's safe, that they can relax. So we do just some basic stretches to unwind the aches and pains that they have from sleeping on a pavement or a park bench. And we get them with pillows, blankets, and yoga mats. Sometimes we actually change their clothes because they stink. So we give them a fresh set of clothes and they can close their eyes and go to sleep. A lot of these people are addicted to drugs. And this is a part of sensuality. This is, you can look at everybody is addicted to something on some level. It could be your soap operas, it could be your cards, it could be alcohol, it could be work, it could be chocolate, it can be absolutely anything. We all kind of have our things to numb a pain. It's a fundamental pain. And sensuality, going out to please our senses, to get those pleasurable experiences, gives us temporary relief of that pain. But it's only in the practice of Pratyahara where we maybe take a moment to sit with it and see what's really there. And this is what I've discovered in my own practice. As Daminiji said, it's one sutra up to your own interpretation. And so when you read it and you try to figure out ways to practice, yes, fine, you can fast or you can do all these restrictive things. But really, when it comes down to it and you sit with this pain, this so-called pain, most of the time we go out to our senses because we are afraid to feel this pain.
That's true.
And so there's a disconnection that happens because the pain is so great that we can't help but just withdraw from that and go out into the senses. But if we have the courage to sit with it for even one moment, we realize that we have the capacity to deal with it, because pain is, to one of discrimination, everything is painful. Like Lord Buddha said, life is suffering. But with that shift of perspective, and Damniji, I've never heard it spoken like that, as it's a shift in your perspective. I think that's really kind of clicked in my brain. Shifting that perspective. Life is not suffering. Life is beautiful, but you need to bring your consciousness up so you can look at the happy moments and the sad moments as one big, colorful spectrum. And this is the practice of Pratyahara, is slowly withdrawing. You don't need your sensory experiences to feel alive. You need to connect to your authentic self to feel whole and alive. And this is a beautiful transition. Being in your body and learning to calm your breath, it's a nice flow that you can start to look within and see what's there and change that direction. So that's all I'd like to add.
Yeah, Harsha, like it's so interesting because like what you said, like it's a coincidence, and I will say in a more lighter mode. This afternoon I was talking to Veena, and Veena was saying like we were talking about pain, right? A simple body pain, right? And many people in the world come to our center. They have some kind of pain, but this pain, they creates a fear to inside them, right? The moment they generate the fear, they have so many like vague thoughts like surrounded their mind, and these vague thoughts generated from fears withdraw them from their real world, and suddenly like means they are physically moving, but they are not there. They are with their pain and that the thought process all the time. So I think like, so I just had some kind of like my knee pain or like leg pain, and still I keep walking. So Veena was asking me like, okay, how can you tolerate the pain, right? I cannot. And exactly I said like, okay, this is the whole thing, that when you accept something and it's there, I think like our body or the consciousness has something, because when people practice, then only we realize like it is there, right? So many people really can tolerate a pain. I will not use the word tolerate. Is a shift in their perception about the pain. So suddenly that pain is not anymore threatening to you. It is not hijacking your mind. It's not hijacking your thought process. You are still in the real world. You are aware, you are conscious, but you still have a pain. Why? Because you shift your like perspective about the pain. So the pain is no more threat. And if it's not a threat, it cannot generate fear. Like, so like as a layman perspective, because fear is the most important thing. So on a lighter note, I like, we have like in India, we call it Mahamandaleshwar, Swami Mahamandaleshwarji. So one of like my very good friend had a birthday yesterday. So I wish him, and he's a very like jovial person. So when he is like normal, he really make you laugh a lot. And he always say like to me, like, Sanjay, if I know what is my next birth, and if I know, like, remember my past birth, then I can work much harder and more, my life become more easy towards the moksha. The problem is like when I take a new birth, I don't remember what I did my like in the last birth. So again, I started collecting a lot of sins and all. So he present that in such a humorous way, such a great Swamiji, but like he talked to you like as your friend. So the second thing is like he never sit in a big chair or like the high chair kind of thing. He sit with you like as your friend. So what Daminji is saying and what Harsha you are saying, like, it's so interesting that it happened in the real life with the people. It happened every day. While we are discussing this, many people may be going through that fear, pain, suffering, lack of consciousness. So that pratyahara to me looks like, okay, we talk in terms of yoga, but suppose we change the language and talk in a layman terms. I think this is the most important art of living, isn't it?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
What do you say, Damniji? I feel it's the most important art of living rather
Yes,
than anything else.
it is the way we live. It is an art. It is a creative art. Each one has to have their own art piece. We are our own art pieces, so we have to keep painting within ourselves. Something I liked about you said was fear and pain and happiness. These three words took me again to the sutras. Nowhere in the sutras does Maharshi Patanjali say that the goal of life is happiness. He rather never uses this word ananda or happiness anywhere, because yoga is based on Samkhya philosophy. And when we talk of Samkhya philosophy, it's very interesting, as Harsha also said, about it begins with accepting pain. And the first karika, I have a book on Samkhya, which I have written a couple of years back, which is used as a textbook now. And when we understand Samkhya philosophy, they say life is pain. We are born through pain. We start life with a cry. We are not born laughing away. We are born crying. So what do we have to do? The purpose is to get over the pain. To accept it first is the first stage. And there is a sutra which reminds me, Maharshi Patanjali says, Vishoka va jyotishmati. That is Vishoka. It's not Ashoka. Shoka is pain. Shoka will be there. Pain is a part of life. Every one of us goes through pain at some point in our life. So pain is a part of life. We don't have to become painless. So he doesn't use the word ashoka. He uses the word vishoka. It's transcend that pain. It's not going to go away. But we have to learn that shift, that that perspective that we have. It's not a normal shift. It's a big, huge, you use the word paradigm. And I love that word. It's a paradigm shift. It is a leap of faith. It is that leap that we have to take to learn to live with it, and yet accept it and see that pain does not hinder my behavior, my attitude. I do not become that pain in the neck for everyone. So I've got to live with it. I've got to be with it, and yet know how to live life. So yes, it is an art of living.
I just want to bring this back
Yes.
to this whole campaign of 80 is the new 50. So that
Ah,
itself is a whole new paradigm shift. So Mr. Lal's turned 80. So you can
Yes.
either choose to, suffer and say, oh, I'm getting old and this and that, but consciously should make a shift and
Yes.
say, yes, I've accepted I'm 80, but
Yes.
I can still choose to enjoy and
yes,
consciously
yes.
live a
I
happy
am enjoying.
life.
I am enjoying.
No, you see, I don't know whether
I,
Mr. Lal, like Harsha, gave this beautiful demonstration through this mala.
hmm.
It's
Yes.
like you need to go up. You don't need to shift.
Yes.
You just
Go
need
ahead.
to climb up. And when you reach up, then you can still enjoy all the sensation, but you are more stable. That's what. Did I get correct, Harsha?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right?
that's exactly. And it's such a simple way of people can visualize that you're not running away from your life.
Exactly.
You're just developing a shift in your perspective
Yes.
to be centered. And when you can look at the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly with a balanced mind, actually you can enjoy your whole life, even if you are sick, even if you are in pain. The
Yes.
whole thing becomes a beautiful rainbow.
Like I get headache, I go and play cards. My headache
Yes.
goes away.
And
Yeah.
Damini, when Daminiji, when you were saying paradigm shift, Veena started smiling. The reason is like paradigm shift is my
Okay.
most favorite
Okay.
word.
Okay.
And whenever I talk to Veena, like every day, I don't know how many times I use this word in my life every day. I strongly believe like the world need a paradigm shift. Because we have like a lot of confusion and a lot of things going on, and it's within the topic, but you see like just yesterday um, the United Nations chairperson, um, the first time said that the global warming is irreversible. So far they were keep talking about, no, we can manage, we can cut down the emission and energy. This is the first time yesterday they accepted that yes, we need to wake up because we are entering into irreversible damage to the planet. So that's where this paradigm shift becomes so important, because the consciousness becomes so important. It is not only about ourselves. I always say, like, means which people don't realize that. Uh, okay, this is our body, our consciousness, but there are two things we are depending on this planet. One is the water, and second is the oxygen. The moment like we don't have oxygen and water, we are gone, right? So we are somehow related with this planet, the external world, right? So I think like in somehow when we talk about Ashtanga yoga or way of living or whatever we can say, again, I using the layman language, right? Somehow this consciousness of self-discipline is there, but respecting the surrounding. And in that, especially respecting the nature, I really want to give this message because this topic is relating something. So we all take care of ourselves, we all take care of our health, but somehow we are not taking care of our planet, you know. So, and then that reminded me of yesterday's that a very big, it's a big news around the world today, that the United Nations chairperson has declared first time in the history, accepted that yes, we are wrong, we are doing wrong. So I always say in this, and this is a serious thing, think about it, like, okay, all said and done, we are doing everything. But imagine that one day we get a news. And I, through this panel discussion, I want to tell all the audience and think about it very seriously, that one day you get a news, we all get a news that in this world, only 1 month of drinking water left. How we are going to react to it? How the world's, every person is going to, everything will collapse, right? All the consciousness will disappear. Like even the strongest people will shake up very much. So I taking this little bit liberty here, Harsha and Damniji, to bring, because like this is another my very big area, to introduce that the respect of the nature is equally important. Whatever we talk about our consciousness, so save the water, save the oxygen, save like is whatever you can see around you is very important. And since we are sitting in Hong Kong, I would convey this message. And Harsha, I'm sure like you know about it, and I discuss a lot with Veena about it. Hong Kong was once a hot spot of the pink dolphin, a very rare species, so beautiful, right? And now they are left less than 100, and no one's talk about it. It's shame, you know. Pink dolphin is a rare species, right? Hong Kong was the hub, like the hot spot in the world map. People were coming from all over the world to witness pink dolphin in Hong Kong. Nowhere else you get pink dolphin in the world. You get all kind of dolphin. But in Hong Kong, means, Harsha, how many times you heard people talking in the media and things about the pink, only few handful of people, you see?
So I grew up in Hong Kong, and the school that I went to, the environment and conservatism and looking after the planet was actually quite already on the forefront of my education. That was a long time ago, like 30 years ago. I remember a school trip where we would go and we went to see the dolphins, and there were hundreds,
yes,
everywhere, and it was
yes,
magnificent. And then I went shortly after I got married, and I took my husband to see them because he loves sea life. And we were very lucky to see a pod of 9.
very good.
So
Yeah.
to see that difference was, you know, a little bit disheartening.
Yes.
And However, having said that, when the world went into lockdown because of COVID last year, everyone was shut in their homes, not really going anywhere, just getting the essential food items and coming back home. What did we see happen on a global scale?
That's true.
The Hong Kong harbor had dolphins swimming in it because there were no boats. And there were deer and bears. And I hear also wonderful stories about how, because Thailand's tourism industry shut down and they closed the beaches, suddenly the reefs have come
Yes.
back in full
Come back.
force.
True.
And so we as humans might be on a suicidal mission to destroy our kind at some point, but nature will always be there, right? Like all it takes is for all of us to destroy ourselves, but
That's
nature
true.
will bounce back without us.
That's
So
true. So how like since we are talking this, like, so just a little bit from like a Pratyahara point of view, like say, because we are talking about like the external and internal, and like we talk about the consciousness, and we talk about the fear, we talk about the thoughts. Uh, do you think this particular topic, what we are talking, because it's very important, should be the part of like the human's internal inbuilt discipline? Like like when we talk about the consciousness, like this is one of the very important consciousness we should have, right? So what's your opinion on that?
I think that in relation to Pratyahara specifically, where you are withdrawing from your senses, I think you have very practical strategies. You look at your consumption, you look at your material desires, and you scale back, right? And that's from that perspective of, if water was only in 1 month, I mean, I guess it depends on the person how they would take that news, right?
Yes.
Some people would say, oh, do you know, I'm going to actually shower every other day instead of every day. Some people are like, oh, I'm never taking a shower again. Some people were like, oh, no more water, I'm going to take a bath every day. So it just depends on the person and their perspective on it, how they would react to something like that. I think in terms of conserving, again, we do what we can, but we need to put pressure on the people who are empowered to make the laws and regulate. And this is, I think, where yoga
Of
and
course, yeah.
social justice actually marry very, very strongly, right? We use our yoga to have harmony within ourselves so that we can live in harmony with our natural world. And when we see a lot of injustices, there's a responsibility to do something about it in whatever capacity that is. And if you look at documentaries like Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy,
Conspiracy,
What
yes.
the Health, and all the pharmaceutical, and you see all of this, there are some very tangible things that you can do as an individual, right? And most of the time, a lot of people don't want to face it. Why? Because it's
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Exactly.
It's inconvenient.
Absolutely true.
Doesn't
So
it does-
Daminiji, you have a task here, because Veena told me like you work with Ayush, you see. This kind of thing should be the part of, because if Ayush has a curriculum, right? And you mentioned you are in the academic side. And I think like in yoga, okay, fine, but these kind of sensitive topic, like what people should be aware around us, right? It's not a behavior only. So we gone like little bit like deep, but like it's very relevant over here. We always talk only about the behavior, our conduct, our relationship with the people. That's it. But then what we are talking today is also a bigger dimension. Like without oxygen, we are dead in 30 seconds, or maximum 1 minute, or maximum 2 minutes, right? But we never talk about it. So it's a good opportunity for you to recommend a curriculum there, you see, because that's the power you have.
Well, okay. Um, the government is on a different trip many times.
Of
But
course.
fortunately, very, very fortunately, Our PM has done a lot about not only yoga in so many other fields, but at least what we are trying to do is we are trying to make a beginning in this field. And the beginning that is there is at least people are becoming more aware, more conscious of many things. So what I feel, even when we were there and formulating all the curriculums, and I was associated with the examination schedules and all that also for yoga teachers, we realized that it is ultimately every person, every human being has to play their own part over here. And that is why the focus went on to seeing that more and more people coming to understanding basics of Indian philosophy. Because I think Modi ji, when he introduced even yoga, like we have this yoga day now on 21st, when he introduced yoga, and where a team of us was brought into understanding or even developing this whole side of how yoga can enter, he wanted that every person should be involved in this. So if it goes at every person, that is at an individual level, I will go into a little off tangent into Indian philosophy, where we talk about the Rita and the Rina. The Rita is the universe. It's a universe that is giving us so much. So we have a Rina, an obligation, a duty to give it back. So if every one of us tries to understand these basic concepts, then we can translate them further into how we manage not only water, air, everything. Like say basics of yamas. Asteya is one concept in yama. Asteya is non-stealing. We're stealing from nature. I buy a plastic bottle of water, I am stealing. I collect a huge, collection of things with plastic and all that. So I am responsible for that. So my footprints at individual level is very important here, and that is what we set out to do. And then we spread it all over, not only our country. This whole concept of Ayush went into the world. So I was a part of a team. We went to Japan, and we were shocked that in Japan they actually follow. We are only talking at very, very individual levels. So here, yoga went into that sphere where, at a personal level, we practice in such a way that the universe also is protected, and so are we. So it's a harmonious growth of the human being within society and within the world. And that is how this whole thing was approached. And we are doing a
Very good.
lot of things. If you go into the details of the syllabus and everything, a lot of effort has been put in by all the yoga masters in the country, where Shri was involved, Gurudev, that is Jagi Vasudev, is involved, Hansa ji, who is going to be our next panelist, she is involved in that, Ramdev ji is involved. So everyone is putting their efforts into developing this kind of a philosophy which is helpful to every human being at a practical level. So that is the main approach. And yes, a lot of things are being done. Maybe it's yet not come out in the way we would have loved it, but it's absolutely there, and it will happen.
Wonderful.
Lovely to know this.
I'm very aware of the time, so I will
Yes.
move on to the other part, which is Dharna.
No, no.
So, yes, can we speak about Dharna? And please share who would like to start? Harsha?
So Dharana. Dharana is concentrating the mind, trying to fix it onto one idea, one concept, one thing. Not so easy, because keeping the mind still is, stuff comes up. But I think it's all about practice. I think it's about choosing one thing that you can do. This again comes back to my work in the social sector. We never worry about what somebody cannot do, right? Don't worry about it. We live in a very modern society that, if you ever go for a corporate job review, they're like, okay, so what are your 3 weaknesses? Let's focus on that. And here I say, okay, well, let's flip it. What do you do well? Let's focus on this. Let's cultivate and nurture what you do well. Everybody can do something. Everybody. I have a beautiful student. She is completely quadriplegic and she's nonverbal. And I go once a week to teach her some private yoga, mainly pranayama, mantra, but also some passive movements to go into adapted asana. And we looked at the concept of focusing the mind and finding a purpose in life. What can you do? One of the things that this young lady loves to do is listen to mantras and sing along with mantras in her own way. And so I shared a story with her about the Benedictine nuns. They're nuns based in Europe that never ever leave their monastery. And what do? What is their sole purpose? Their sole purpose is to pray for the world. Now imagine where the world would be if we didn't have these nuns dedicating their lives to praying for all of us. And so I said, well, do you think that's something do you think that might be your purpose? It seems like you are not leaving your monastery. You're at home all the time. You love listening to mantras. So why don't you do that for the world? And she laughed and she smiled. So in this linked Dharana, I encourage everybody listening, what is the one thing you do well that is going to make the world kinder, more compassionate, that's going to look after Mother Earth, that's going to look after your family? We have so much impatience and hostility in our day-to-day lives. What is one thing to lessen that? It can be so simple. And if you start there and focus, that just grows. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Beautiful. So focused concentration.
Like it's like I just can't stop myself. You again like hit my something. Is I don't know, it's a weird coincidence like today is happening like that. In 1989 in Rio, I was attending the Global Biodiversity Conference. And first time, because I'm from the University of Hong Kong Department of Ecology and Biodiversity. Our department is one of the largest in the world who work on the ecosystem. So there's a lot of people working on the marine conservation, habitat conservation, this, that, and all those kind of things. So so many people I keep hearing about talking about the tiger conservation or turtle conservation and so much like just save. So that we realized that that time, 1989, right before 90, I said wow, so many people are talking about we need to save something. And people were so confused. And I don't know, as a very innocent thing in my presentation, the tagline came out, save one species at a time. Okay. And then I didn't know that this word will become so popular around the world. It's 1989 Rio in Biodiversity Conference. And then everyone started, I also use many times in Hong Kong, there's a supermarket 360, which I designed. I gave my own branding called Change the World One Bite at a Time. That's what exactly saying, if you choose one thing and focus on that, every person suddenly will start feeling extreme amount of confidence, because that's the one thing everyone can do. The only thing what we cannot do, because we try to do so many things and we just lose the focus. So just wanted to share, couldn't stop myself. Thank you.
So Damini ji, what's your take on this?
Okay, I'll go back again to the sutras. Deshabandha Shittasya Dharana. Going at one bit at a time, one step at a time. So the step starts with us. And it says that when it starts with us, our mind is the main problem area. So that chittasya dharana, this mind is like a rushing river. And it's always busy in so many ways. And it's always frittered out. So here, dharana represents that this mind that is always rushing, running, always being frittered out, take it and give it something to do. So focus it at one place, whichever place it's comfortable at. If you're fine with breathing, focus on your breathing. If you're fine doing some work, do that. If you're okay painting, do that. It's nothing about internal or external. It is just about taking the mind and centering it, focusing it at one point for a certain amount of time, because we can't do it all the time. So at least for some time, if we can sit and take the mind and keep it focused at one place. I'll just share one little thing about how the sutra is described by a great commentator, Vyas. He says that when you have very soiled clothes, like if like you're wearing, I can see, doctor, you're wearing a dark t-shirt, but if you're wearing white, the way Harsha is, and it gets soiled, like you spill something on it, what do you need? How will you wash it? You need to first soak it, treat the stain, and then you have to wash it. So the commentator, great commentator Vyas says, like, dharana is when you're soaking your mind, you're letting something rest for a period of time, so that all those collected impurities can be removed or washed out later on through dhyan and samadhi. So dharana is just a beginning. It is the beginning of trying to take your mind and give it something to do, to focus it, to center it. So that's all about Dharana, because I know we are also rushing out of time. Won't go into it more.
So coming back to Mr. Lal, he's been very, very, like I said, focused and concentrated and reigniting his singing passion that it has. He has a following all around the world.
Yeah, Veena, you said I'm not working nowadays, you know. Of course, I'm working for Naveda. I'm working now more than I used to work before when I had so many offices, so many people working for me. I never used to work that hard what I'm working
Working,
today.
just focused. Now you're
Yes,
focused. We have
I'm
made
focused and
focus,
working for focus, working,
working.
working.
You have
Yeah,
reignited your passion. So Naveda has
yeah,
given
that's
seniors
it.
like yourself a purpose to
Yeah, but
make yourself healthier, happier, and focused, and live more
yeah,
consciously, raise up the consciousness, and give the same platform to the seniors and tell them that you have a purpose. Now go up the
so
ladder. You know.
that is working. That is working. I'm working now.
No, it is very interesting because in most of we started. Veena must have mentioned that before to you, all of you. We started this panel discussion from 21st of January, and since then we are doing. And Mr. Lal completed his 80th birthday on 15th of April, and uh, I'm quite inspired, uh, Mr. Lal, the way he conduct himself. So the whole idea is like you meet many people in your life, but then there are certain people who not only themselves are happy, but they keep other people also very happy around you. So when you meet Mr. Lal personally, you can feel that kind of like aura around him. So that's why I just like came in my mind like, okay, 80 is just a number. We always say it's a number. When you meet him, there's no way you can say this guy is any more than like 50, right? So for me, I'm going to be a 57. I said, Mr. Lal, you are a great inspiration for me, because if I look at you, I can see I have a 20 more beautiful active years in my life. So I don't have to slow down or kind of thing. And then Veena is coming behind 40 something. I said, Veena, now you can see like uh, I can be example than Mr. Lal. So it's a kind of chronological kind of things that everyone can get inspired from each other. So then in that whole thing, what beautiful thing had happened in the past, that we met so many people like 90 years, 95 years. It's so amazing to find so many senior people. They can very easily beat the 40 years old and 50 years old people. So Mr. Lal, you won't believe he walked 15,000 steps per day. It's just like crazy. Like a lot of young people don't do that. At the age of 80, can you believe that he walks 15,000 steps per day, and he has a group of like friends, not one or two. It's like 35, 40 people, and they're competing with each other. And they are all that age, right? So that is like really great inspiration. And I said like, wow, I want to follow this gentleman. And then when I started following, so then I found, wow, he is passionate, like he's really passionate about something. So that's what Veena is talking about. Like his new passion is his singing. He loved to sing. And then you should watch his
His videos.
Facebook page.
Yeah,
And
YouTube.
here, if we don't give him opportunity, he will be very disappointed. So
Don't give an opportunity to just sing. Yes, he will be disappointed.
So
Or
I
may I
start.
just sum up? Because listening about Mr. Lal, that Pratyahara and Dharna is exactly about this. When there is a purpose and a passion, the senses are never frittered away, and you're always one-pointed. Beautiful. I would love to meet you one day.
Yes, you have
So,
to come to Hong Kong, or I come to India. Where
so,
you're from, Bombay or where? Where are you from?
At the moment, I'm in US. I'm in Portland,
Ah,
Oregon.
oh, okay.
so Mr. Lal is going to sing, and then Harsha will end with a nice practice, a meditation practice. Yeah, should we do that? So, Mr.
Okay,
Lal, please.
since we are talking about we have been talking about yoga, health, and happiness. So I sing a nice bhajan for you today. Bhajan. सुख के सब साथी दुख में न कोई सुख के सब साथी दुख में न कोई मेरे राम तेरा नाम एक साचा दूजा न कोई सुख के सब साथी दुख में न कोई जीवन आनी जानी छाया जीवन आनी जानी छाया झूठी माया झूठी काया फिर काहे को सारी उमरिया फिर काहे को सारी उमरिया पाप की गठरी धोई सुख के सब साथी दुख में न कोई
Bravo! So,
he actually summarized the Pratyahara and Dharna, right, with this song.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Harsha, can we have some practice?
Yes, so this is a very light-hearted meditation practice that I like to share with some of my students to get them some sort of a practical awareness, especially people who are not so familiar with the Yoga Sutras and the concept of Pratyahara. So it's a creative visualization, and then we'll follow with a little bit of silence. So please close your eyes if you're comfortable, or gaze softly at the floor. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale fully. And allow the brain to relax. We've had some very engaging conversation, but now it's time to come home to yourself. Breathing in again and taking a longer exhalation. I invite you to visualize yourself at home, comfortable, content, and steady. And at home, imagine that you walk into your kitchen. And on the kitchen counter is a chopping board and a knife. And you look towards your refrigerator and you open it. And the entire refrigerator is absolutely empty except for a lemon. And so you reach inside and you take hold of the lemon. Take a moment to visualize how the cold lemon feels on your hand. And you take the lemon into both your hands after closing the fridge. And you rub it between your hands, rolling it up and down. And then you place it on your cheek and you roll it up and down on one cheek. And then you hold the lemon right up to your nose and you take a nice deep breath in, smelling all that freshness of the lemon. And then you take the lemon over to the chopping board. And before chopping it, you rub it back and forth on the chopping board so it gets nice and soft and you can feel the juice inside. And then you take the knife and very carefully you cut the lemon in half, and you take one half and you cut it in half again so you have a lemon wedge. And the smell changes and you inhale that shifting smell where the juices come up through your nose. And you take hold of one lemon wedge. With your mouth closed, you rub your lips with the fleshy part of the lemon. So if you have any cuts or dry lips, maybe it's a little stingy. And then you take your tongue and you lick your lips, tasting the lemon. And then you take a huge bite. You shove the entire wedge in your mouth and you bite down with your teeth. And the juice squirts inside your mouth and maybe even outside. And the juices hit the back of your throat. And you tense up behind the sides of your jaw. And then you lay the lemon back down on the chopping board, exploring all the flavors of the lemon. And take a nice deep breath in and exhale fully. And reflect on that. Did your physical body start to salivate just by visualizing eating a lemon? Did you have a physical reaction where your mouth started to water? And if so, you can realize the power of our senses, but we don't actually need the sense objects to have the experience in our minds. And when we start to withdraw the senses, we can use the power of the mind to create the most beautiful experiences in our minds. Please take another deep breath in, exhaling fully, sending yourself absolute gratitude for looking after your mind and your soul today. And very softly open the eyes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful experience.
Thank you.
And I've been tasting the lemon because I have a glass of water with a lemon in it.
My mouth has become watering now.
Mine
Lemon now.
Mine too.
Quite incredible how when you really visualize it, you get a physical reaction.
Yeah.
Yes. Amazing.
Power of the mind.
Think of our yummy, tasty food. We already go. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's been a really, really interesting, interactive discussion. I loved it. Thank you, Harsha. Thank you, Damini. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you, Mr. Lal, for making the session beautiful. And we have our last yoga session next Thursday, which we're going to be covering the seventh and eighth limb of yoga. So looking forward to that. So in fact, what I uh, do request is if you can make it. In fact, I wanted to invite all the speakers who have come from the first session to the last to all be together. So if it is available and it's feasible for both of you to be there, please be there at the same time next week. I will send you a personal invitation. So it will actually be a beautiful closing with all the speakers that joined us and shared this knowledge, their knowledge with us.
Yeah, and Hansaji is my guru too. So,
Actually, Hansaji is not able to make it.
oh,
She's not able to make it. She's very busy.
okay,
So we have Dr. Tomar, who's a
okay.
very, very, very good speaker and scholar in yoga as well. So I've heard a lot about him. In fact, we had a personal communication with him just the other day. So we will be sending out the invitation. So do let me know if you're able to make it so that I will also include you all in the flyer then. All right.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.